Hi, I'm Marty Judnick, and we're going to be discussing DUI Mythbusters Edition today. Let's talk about the science behind DUI and some of the popular myths that are out there and dispel them. In order to do that, let's get scientific. All right, well, here we are, getting scientific on DUI. So the first part of DUI that most people have myths about are breath tests. There's two types of breath tests in Montana. The first is what we call a PBT, or portable breath test. This type of breath tester uses inside what's called a fuel cell. Now, the fuel cell has a chemical reaction with alcohol that will deliver a known result. So in other words, the more alcohol that it detects, it will have a reading that goes up and up and up. And there's software that has programmed this device to tell it at certain quantities that is the calculation for what they believe is a breath alcohol content. So there is some room for software issues with this thing. These are battery powered, but some of the myths that are around there are that you can put a penny in your mouth and somehow the penny is going to cause this breath tester to show an error or be inaccurate. That's not going to happen. This does not work with copper or a penny. It doesn't detect anything with a penny in your mouth. So that myth has been debunked. Doesn't work. The other kind of breath test myth out there is honey. If you eat a bunch of honey, that will somehow cause this thing to have a problem. That myth also, no legs to it. Honey is simply sugar. That is a natural form of it. This does not register anything with sugar. It's not going to plug it up. It's not going to have any effect on a breath result. So honey, myth. Next is smoking. Some people have said if you smoke a cigarette right before you take one of these, that is going to cause a problem with it. That myth, also not true. Smoking has no effect on these. It doesn't even really clog them up. These are designed to blow out all of the air that is selected as a sample within it, and smoking, just another myth, doesn't work. Mints are another one. If you eat a bunch of mints, then that is supposed to give you wonderful fresh breath for the officer, maybe not detect alcohol on your breath as much, but those mints are not going to affect your breath result in a PBT. The only one that's out there that might have some reaction would be mouthwash. There's an old myth that if you drink a bunch of mouthwash, that will somehow affect your result. That's somewhat true, as the Mythbusters would say. That's plausible, and here's why. Mouthwash does contain alcohol, and this instrument reads alcohol. If you were to drink a bunch of mouthwash or swish a lot in your mouth, seconds before you take this breath test, it probably would register a higher result than what your internal alcohol content would be. And that would be because it's detecting the alcohol from the mouthwash in your mouth. Something you need to keep in mind is alcohol is a volatile compound. So what that means is scientifically it evaporates, and it evaporates fairly quickly. So the alcohol that's in the mouthwash in your mouth is going to evaporate pretty quickly. It will also get absorbed into your skin if you leave it in your mouth quickly as well. So that will actually contribute to your internal alcohol content. So does mouthwash work? Well, it depends what you call work. It could cause a problem on this, but it's probably only going to cause it to read a higher reading and not a lower one. So probably not the best idea. As far as myths go, I wouldn't suggest it. Protocol is the only real issue with these things. They need to be calibrated, they need to be tested, they need to make sure they are reading in proper range. So of all those myths for a portable breath test, none seem to work. Other DUI myths not breath test related are that, hey, if I don't have my keys, I can't be convicted of a DUI. That's not true. In Montana, our law is DUI is driving or in actual physical control of a motor vehicle. And actual physical control means you have the ability to control it. So even if your keys are in your pocket, out of the ignition, on the floor, it realistically doesn't matter if you maintained your ability to grab those keys and move the vehicle at any point. There's a couple minor exceptions to that rule, but those are pretty much cars that are incapable of being driven, like ones that are in a crash or inoperable. As far as the keys go, Just taking the keys out of your ignition is not enough to get out of the DUI. This is pretty important for Montana because we have a cold winter up here, and if you choose to sleep in your car while you're drunk, that could lead to a DUI for you if your keys are anywhere near you. So the key myth, just a myth, doesn't work. The next myth is that somebody has passed their standardized field sobriety tests. The roadside tests that you see people do when they're stopped for DUI, we hear it every day, hey, I think I passed those tests. Well, that's actually a myth. Those tests are not pass-fail tests. What they are they're a totality test for an officer to look at your overall performance in doing those 3 standardized tests. Each test is looking for some cues of intoxication, but one or all is not a sure case of DUI or not. They have to look at them all and then make an informed decision from there. Another myth of DUI is if you actually give a breath test and your breath alcohol is below 0.08, that you can simply get out of the DUI. Hey, I'm good to go. That's a myth. In Montana, you can still be arrested if you give a breath test if your breath alcohol is 0.04 or above. And the reason for that is because alcohol affects people in different ways. Some people can be below the 0.08 threshold, but still be what an officer may consider to be intoxicated or under the influence, not safe to drive. So you can still be prosecuted for a DUI, even if you give a breath test and even if that breath test is 0.08 or below in Montana. Now, keep in mind, the state of Utah has just changed their threshold from 0.08, which is what every other state in America is, to 0.05. It won't be a big shock if most states follow that trend and lower that alcohol content to 0.05, which isn't much. One of the next myths in DUI is that you can beat a skin alcohol sensor. We call that a scram bracelet in Montana. It's basically, if you've seen on TV, the anklet monitor that people strap onto their ankle to detect alcohol on probation or pending trial or what have you. There's many myths on how to beat this, so let's go over a couple of them. First would be wedging a piece of paper in between the monitor and your skin. That absolutely doesn't work. I don't know why people even would think that works. The monitors are designed where if they don't have contact with actual skin, then it alerts. And so if you try to shove something in there that breaks the contact with skin, there's a problem. And that contact has an electric charge to it, has a temperature charge to it, has a moisture content to it. There's a lot of factors that tell the monitor when it is attached or touching skin, and trying to slide something in there that doesn't meet that criteria will simply set the monitor off and you go to jail. So not a good idea shoving a piece of paper in your anklet alcohol monitor. That isn't gonna work. Some people think submerging it in water will somehow help it out and not let it detect alcohol. That also is a myth. That doesn't work. They actually tell you not to get these things wet if you can help it. They can resist some measure of water, but complete submersion will typically set them off again, and it'll be a problem for you. That's definitely not a green light to drink alcohol. Just submerging it in water, myth, doesn't work. A couple of the last ones are that if you're cooperative with an officer and you're a super nice guy to the officer and the officer thinks you just did a great job cooperating, that means you should be able to get a deal, maybe get out of the DUI because you were so helpful and cooperative. That is most definitely a myth. Officers appreciate it when you're helpful and cordial to them, but that is not going to get you out of a DUI charge. That is very much a myth. They will hold you to the law just as anybody else. Even the person that is the least cooperative person doesn't get any non-preferential treatment to people that are cooperative. One of the last myths is that, hey, I've never been arrested for DUI before, I've never had any issue with DUI before, so that means I should get a deal, get out of this one. That one is, again, a myth. Having no prior DUI history is great, that's wonderful, but I guess everybody can start at some point, and a prosecutor or judge is not going to care that you have an otherwise clean record. If you did make the mistake of getting a DUI, they're going to hold you to that, and you're not going to get any preferential treatment simply because you have an otherwise clean record. So if you want to talk about more DUI myths or talk about a DUI charge or other related things, give me a call. Let's talk about it. Our consultations are free. You can call me at this number above or check us out online. I'm Marty with the Judnick Law Office.